I would be fine talking about Better Call Saul. What about you guys? I'm joined by Aaron North and Jim Dietz, by the way. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
You work that morning shift at Cinnabon, you get the fresh coffee. That's definitely worth it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you're still working at Cinnabon. No offense to
Omaha.
anyone working at Cinnabon. But,
The Walking Dead fans that watch just Walking Dead are like, what is going on? Why is there Cinnabons? Why are you making me hungry when I want to talk about this episode?
And what an episode it's been. It's been a really divisive episode. I've seen among a lot of fans of the show. So
Now, Jim, can we refer to you in this episode as nothing but Slippin' Jimmy?
no,
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so yes, we are here to discuss The Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 9, what happened and what's going on, which was, as you guys just said, a very divisive episode online. Russ can't make it tonight. I know, though, that he was not a fan of this episode. I don't know what Rich's thoughts were on the episode, but for the three of us, Aaron and Jim, let's have you guys start. Were you positive on this episode, negative on this episode, somewhere in between?
I was definitely more positive on this episode, mainly because of what some people seem to be marking on is with the artsiness of the episode. I think director Greg Nicotero did a fine job of what was going on here in Scott Gable's script. I mean, it did service the things that needed it. I mean, if we're going to get rid of a character, at least I feel like he did a good job of utilizing the actor involved and giving a unique way to send off said character.
I also enjoyed that part of the episode too. I mean, a lot of people were very critical of that part, but I didn't mind that part at all. I guess my major criticism with the episode is that how much I love Tyrese in the comics as opposed to how much I didn't love the potential of Tyrese that was kind of squandered in the TV show in a lot of places. And I think that part didn't sit well with me. But as far as the part that a lot of people seem to have trouble with, the stylistic choices, the structural choices that Nicotero shows in this, I thought really showed an interesting side of the series we haven't seen before, and really kind of gave us that same old zombie story in a whole new light. I liked it. I enjoyed it. Overall positive.
I'm also overall positive, but I had some huge problems with this episode, which we'll get into when we discuss it, of course, but definitely an overall positive, but man, were there some problems, at least for me, this particular viewer, I had some issues with it, but we will get into that. Before we do, of course, this was a mid-series premiere, which means they're going to have big ratings, or at least that's the hope. So, Aaron, I'm going to send it over to you now. What are the ratings we have for not only Walking Dead this week, but Talking Dead, and also the premiere of Better Call Saul?
Yeah, I'll start with Better Call Saul, which is, of course, the spin-off from Breaking Bad.
Which was awesome, by the way.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a solid start for that series. Better Call Saul is apparently the biggest series premiere in cable history, delivering 4.4 million adults, 1849, and 4.0 million adults, 2554. So, good news for Vince Gilligan and Gina the gang. The Walking Dead returns as the biggest regularly scheduled program of 2015, with 15.6 million viewers and 10.1 million adults, 1849. Let's see, and then Talking Dead, the after show, returned at a later time slot because of Better Call Saul taking over the immediate following of Walking Dead. So it happened at 11:15 to 12:15, and it still had 2.8 million viewers and 1.9 million adults, 1849.
Which I don't have Talking Dead's numbers in front of me like the previous numbers. I think that's slightly down, but that's fully understandable, seeing as it was over an hour later than normal, which will only be this week for anybody who's listening and wasn't aware. Better Call Saul is going to be airing Monday night. In fact, it's airing right now as we record its second episode, so you won't have to worry about waiting an extra hour and 15 minutes if you weren't into Better Call Saul for Talking Dead next week or any of the other weeks.
Yeah, and lastly, there's this thing from the people over at AMC that have a quote here. It says, "We are supremely thankful for the talented people who call this network home, and for the fans who continue to make AMC a television destination unlike any other, walking, calling, talking, humbling." So they're certainly quite proud of this kind of the Sunday lineup they have, which I mean, right now it's just Walking Dead. We don't have a Sexy Star Loner Sun yet, right, Jim? But but between that and Talking Dead, it's certainly been it's been a very positive experience for AMC, along with the other shows and plenty of acclaim that they've received over the years with this thing.
Yeah, what happened to that American Revolution drama they had for about half a minute there? Is that still on?
It's still on. It's returning very soon. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know some people were complaining when it was first announced that Better Call Saul was going to take this time slot for this week. But I think at least for this first week, it paid off in spades. I mean, there's some great ratings for Better Call Saul. It'll be really interesting to see. I know this isn't a Better Call Saul podcast, although that would be a lot of fun. But it'll be interesting to see whether it keeps its numbers without The Walking Dead lead in tonight and next week as well.
Well, I mean, The Walking Dead basically serves as a Super Bowl way of getting a show going.
Exactly.
Like, so whoever hasn't watched Breaking Bad or only had some interest in Better Call Saul, they at least had the perfect lead in to get to that show to watch it and see if they like it for themselves. So.
I also thought it was interesting from that same article that they don't have the +3 and +7 numbers yet, which for anybody who doesn't know, that's for people who, for +3, it's people who DVR it and watch it within 3 days after it aired, or the +7s are people who DVR it and watch it within 7 days of when it aired. So obviously they can't have those numbers yet as we record this, but they're saying they expect for Walking Dead that by the time the +7s are in, over 20 million people will have watched the episode in the US alone, which that's insane for television these days. That just, I mean, we say it all the time, it doesn't happen, period. Like, aside, for scripted television, for the Super Bowl, sure, it happens. Maybe the Academy Awards or something like that, sure, maybe. Scripted television, it just doesn't happen and has not for years.
It's really interesting how big a part the +3 and the +7 numbers play now. I mean, Nielsen only started tracking them just over a year ago, and now, I mean, they're the kind of things that buoy shows like Gotham and keep shows like that on the air. Just, I know The Flash doubled its viewership just from +3 and +7s, so it's really becoming a huge factor in television ratings.
Which, I mean, the +3s and the +7s aren't as important for, say, advertisers, which really that's the whole reason we have the Nielsen ratings is so advertisers know how many people are watching a show, so they know how much they're going to have to pay for a commercial during that time period. If somebody's DVRing a show, they're probably, not always, but probably not watching the commercials. However, the +3s and the +7s, that gives a lot for syndication, that goes well for Netflix and for Amazon and Hulu and other providers that might be interested in kicking in some money, maybe picking it up if the show is no longer going to have a home on its own network, like with Community or The Killing, speaking of an AMC show. That's the numbers that they're looking at. So even though it's not as important for, say, an advertiser, it's still very important. But that's enough about boring math and numbers, gentlemen. Shall we talk about what's happened and what's going on?
Let's do it.
Alrighty. So what happened and what's going on is a little bit non-linear, just slightly, but I'm going to do my best to pretty much just stick with the linear version of the story. A couple things that we see out of order, but we're going to try to do this in the most easy to follow way.
It's kind of an episode that made you wonder what's happening and what's going on.
Yeah, especially the opening sequence. It just almost seemed like a random series of scenes, but it was like some of the scenes were kind of strange and bizarre enough they just kind of really drew you in, like the scene with the little girls. I mean, you didn't know the context of the scenes because they were taken out of that context in the opening, before the credits part of the show. But
it was playing this kind of deception on you. I feel like for not just like casual fans of the show, or at least just kind of people that watch the show, but like ones that some people like me who are movie geeks and TV nerds and and people like us who do podcasts and nitpick everything. Where you look at the episode, you look at the start of that episode, and it seems like it's showing you like a recap of things that happen through images. Where you're thinking, you see shoveling into the dirt, you're thinking, okay, they're probably burying Beth. You see shots of the prison and Woodbury, and you're thinking, okay, well, we're getting kind of a recap of things that we've seen in the past. And we see the little girls, and we've seen them in the past, and we're getting caught up to where we are now. But that's
and the picture of the cabin that looks like where they died.
Exactly, and so you think that you're just getting kind of this like emotional recap and catching you up, which it kind of is in ways, which is clever on the part of the show. But in fact, it's just completely throwing you through a loop. It's actually stuff that's going to happen throughout this episode, and it's very clever. I mean, I can't emphasize how much I really like the style of this episode. I'm very much happy to praise Greg Nicotero, who's gone from just making fairly strong episodes of The Walking Dead to ones that actually try to challenge the viewer visually and stylistically.
Which didn't The Grove, the episode where Mika and Lizzie died, didn't that also episodes start with a pre-credit sequence that happened later on in the episode?
Yeah, it starts with the tea kettle and then panning out to looking out through the kitchen window.
With the tag, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it has, it's like in slow motion, it has the music playing over it. It's a bit. It's a nice little trick, yeah.
Right. So the plot of the episode proper starts with our group of survivors still reeling from the tragedy of Beth's death at Grady Memorial Hospital, and they decide that the best way to honor Beth is to complete her intended mission of reuniting Noah with his family. So the entire group makes a 500-mile journey to Shirewild Estates, which is a walled community outside of Richmond, Virginia.
Something I like about this already is that we don't have like half the episode spent on Rick, saying we should do this, and someone else like we shouldn't do. Like it's just like no, we're going. Like, we're already in the car. We're there. Like who needs all these details? They have walkie-talkies, good for them apparently, and yeah, we're on the way.
I mean, if you remember back to season 2, a 500-mile journey could have taken them like 4 seasons.
It's funny though because like at this point it seems like the whole cast is like, what else do they have to do? Like later in the episode, they're grasping at straws. Maybe we need to go to Washington, even though Eugene was lying. Maybe that's where we need to go. Or they just seemed like they were all just kind of grasping onto something. Especially when Michonne starts picking up ideas like how they could refortify where they were at. The wall community and stuff. It seemed like what else do we have to do? Well, we might as well do this.
Right, exactly.
And if anything, it did seem like it was a plausible way of getting the group somewhere too. I mean, they don't have any real direction right now because staying at the church with crazy pants is not the best way. And by the way, seeing him like in the opening, is like, "God, this idiot!" Like that was my reaction immediately. No one wants to hear it at a funeral, but whatever.
So the group is split in half for pretty much the entire episode. We get some glimpses of other cast members right at the end, and I guess maybe in the beginning too with some of the quick flashes. But for the most part, this episode we're focusing on Rick, Michonne, Tyrese, Glenn, and Noah. They're the ones who are scouting ahead into the community that Noah is from. Everybody else is hanging back just in case things go terribly. Spoilers: things go pretty terribly, just not in the way they were expecting.
Right, and Rick is in constant contact, like you said, over walkie-talkie with Carol and the rest of the group.
Right.
And it's good to have, focus out. We talked about plenty of times on this show, on this podcast, how the show does good by having focus and having less characters involved and giving us kind of a solid story. And even if there's a B plot, it's generally related to what's going on with the A plot in some sense. So I like that.
Right. So while they're coming up to the community of Shirewild Estates, Tyrese tells Noah and the others about his father, and Sasha's father, of course, who always used to tell his children that as citizens of the world, it was their duty to listen to the news and never change the channel or turn it off just because something was terrible that was being talked about. That they should always know about the atrocities that take place in the world so they can be prepared and have their eyes open to how things actually are. And that, of course, will be a big metaphor throughout the rest of the episode.
That was such a long soliloquy on Tyrese's part that I almost expected a jump scare at some point. Like them to hit something on the road or something, come through the windshield or whatever. I don't know. It wasn't badly written. It just seemed to go on a little. I'm like, okay, I get it now. That's kind of the first time it was telegraphed to me in this episode because it wasn't spoiled for me. And sorry, Jerry, but when Tyrese dying, this is my first clue here. It's like Tyrese getting very philosophical with Noah at the very beginning of the show.
Right, passing on some words of wisdom as he will continue to do a little bit later.
Honestly, I wasn't too focused on the idea of Tyrese possibly dying. I was just thinking, well, yeah, okay, he's getting some material to work with. I felt like it was just going to be an episode that happened to center around these two characters based on just events that happened and how one can relate to the other without necessarily a tragic result. Obviously, that took place. But,
yeah, honestly, I also did not catch the foreshadowing the first time through, and I assumed this was more geared towards Noah and expanding his story because of what happened with Beth. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. I would have thought it was weighted more 60-40 towards Noah instead of 60-40 towards Tyrese, or maybe even 80-20. By the end of it. But so they arrive at the community, and they discover that it was at one point in the past overrun, and everyone inside was killed. And you can see spray painted on a bridge hedge wall, or a brick hedge wall, near, and then that wolves are near, which we don't get any explanation of, but there's definitely a lot of interesting things going on, interesting and terrible things going on around and near this particular community that they will go past, and I'm sure we'll talk about. Noah breaks down because this means his family is dead, his mother, his twin brother, and his dad. I guess his dad was already dead, but the rest of his family and any other people and friends he knew there. And Tyrese stays behind to comfort him, while Rick, Michonne, and Glenn decide, well, we're already here, we might as well scout for supplies.
When Glenn initially looks over the wall, I was like, what's going to happen here?
That's where I thought the jump scare was going to come in. Oh, good lord.
It was almost like the trope in those World War II movies, where the guy comes out, he's like, all clear, no snipers.
Yeah, and then just flies back and missed. But no, Glenn is fine, at least for the time.
I did like the fact that you had this kind of reflective theme going on of regret. Like Glenn was wondering whether it would have made a difference if they killed, the woman at the hospital or whatever. And then Tyrese is wondering if it would have made a difference in his last moments. They just keep seeing that theme repeat itself over and over, kind of despair and regret of where they're at.
Well, and I'll get to this, I guess, when we get to where Tyrese is. But yeah, the reflection on what they've basically just gone through. I assume it's been less than a week since things happened. It certainly sets up the idea that this is one of the bleaker episodes of The Walking Dead we've ever seen, which is only saved by the fact that it has some style to make it a little more visually engaging and hark less on the fact that some really bad stuff has happened in them, or the kind of the thesis of the series is in full effect in terms of if it's better to be alive or dead in this world.
So Tyrese and Noah both stay behind while the others look for supplies. Tyrese tells Noah that he wanted to give in and die when Karen was killed, but he kept on fighting and decided to live on, and as a result, he was able to protect Judith when she needed him and get her back to his father. And I think he also lists a few other things. Basically, if I'd given up, I would not have been around to do these good things, and that was reward enough in itself, basically, for me sticking around. Noah stands to his feet and sprints to his family's home because he wants to see what happened there. Tyrese follows him, and they arrive and find his family all dead. Noah kind of breaks down by his mother's side and apologizes to her for not coming home sooner, and Tyrese explores the house.
And he does make a point to Noah, by the way, doing a good job sprinting ahead of everybody else with a sprained leg or whatever.
Yeah,
right.
Well, it's been 17 days.
I know, but it's more of just you see how visible the kind of limp in his walk is, and he's still keeping a good pace ahead of everybody else. So it's like, but I'm not harking on that to catch up. But regardless, once he does get to the house, what I was going to say is that he kind of breaks down there, and then Tyrese gets there, and Noah's like, I want to go in. Tyrese's like, me first. Try to make sure.
Exactly.
Not the most effective tactics apparently, but we'll see.
So Tyrese goes further into the house. You can hear a zombie somewhere, but it seems like it's kind of off in the distance. In the house, probably, and Tyrese seems to be looking for it, but then he gets distracted by a series of pictures on the wall of, I guess it would be Noah's twin brother's bedroom, of two young twin boys, I think like at a playground and at a carnival or something. There's a bunch of different pictures. But he's looking at that when Noah's twin brother comes up behind him and bites Tyrese. Who saw that coming? Everybody except Tyrese.
Yeah, because the show was, in doing this, it was like the equivalent of having a character getting beaten in the head by a baseball bat by making sure that that they're twin brothers and not just one. Emphasizing that you only see one. It's like, right. Okay, I get another shot of the brother. Okay, yeah, twins.
Yes, I mean, there are two of them. Are there two of them? I mean, they're usually come in pairs, twins.
Now that said, when the twin did arrive, and he came at Tyrese, and he actually got the arm, me and my two friends sitting in the room, we all shrieked, no, why?
That's true. I remember that with the photos. They kept shooting back, almost said Hitchcocky and cutting.
Yeah, it was like,
there are two twins.
So after Tyrese is bitten, Noah hears what's going on, and he comes in and he dispatches his twin brother. And Noah then goes to retrieve Rick and the others to come and help Tyrese because what is he going to do? He's not familiar with how to fix all that kind of stuff on his own. And then Tyrese begins to lose a lot of blood and begins to hallucinate and give his best J. Walter Weatherman routine.
So,
I'm happy you got that
thank
right.
you. Two things.
That's why you always leave a note.
Two things. First off, the second Noah had to leave to get help, I'm like, Tyrese is done for. There's no way. You can't wait around with a bitten arm and like be fine. So he's done. And what I then, when the hallucination started, what I really came to admire was the fact that the show very deliberately did not list the guest stars that would be appearing, which made me very happy because that meant they wanted to make sure they could preserve that surprise of all the characters coming back, which was great.
Yeah. And you say you're like, oh well, here he's dead. I kept going back and forth during the episode because there was a lot of commercial breaks. Like they held commercial breaks for later in the episode, which meant you got a lot of them in the second half, which is annoying. But that's what happens. You're gonna have the same amount of commercials, it's just where you choose to put them. But due to the way they were playing with time and focusing on long periods with Rick and Michonne and Glenn, like it wasn't really clear to me at first how long it had been since he was actually bit. And because of the nature of the character, I kind of kept going back and forth on he's probably dead, right? Well, maybe not. Maybe it's only been like a minute and a half. Well, maybe it's been longer. And well, he's losing a lot of blood. So I think they did a decent enough job, at least for me, of keeping me guessing, of being like, really, is he actually going to die after all this? And oh yeah, I guess he is.
It was more like it was less like the blood loss thing. It was more just the idea of the zombie whatever gets into his veins. And I'm thinking if Noah had to like sprint down the street to get to his house, then he has to sprint all the way back to Rick, and he has to sprint all the way back to get to the house again. Then they have to cut off his arm. It's like there's no way that he's not going to be affected in some way by his big zombie biting his arm. But yeah, it was my real concern. I was just in a sense of denial at some points when he started losing things. Like maybe he didn't get it all. Maybe he's just like freaked out in the room by himself. It'll be fine. That didn't happen either.
He just ate some really bad mushrooms.
Right? Yeah, something like that.
No,
he was Rick phone call crazy or something.
Yeah.
No, you get bit once in the arm, but twice.
That's why I was really thinking. Okay, maybe he didn't get. Maybe it's just all in his crazy head. But that still wasn't happening.
Yeah, so Tyrese, like I started to say, he starts to hallucinate, and there's multiple levels to this hallucination. One, there's a radio in the room, and he starts to hallucinate radio broadcasts, just kind of vague radio broadcasts about unrest and rebel groups and cannibalism and the kind of stuff you'd expect to hear on a radio broadcast in a zombie world. We do know a little behind-the-scenes stuff that was actually Andrew Lincoln doing the voice of the radio announcer, which is cool. But in addition to that, like Aaron mentioned, we had the cameos. He starts to get visited by the ghosts of Christmas and Hanukkah and Easter and Kwanzaa past all over the place. Yes, exactly. The costuming was weird, but no. So I don't remember the exact order that he's visited by them, but he's visited by, and many of them at the same time, Martin, who was the guy who he did not kill, who threatened to kill Judith, Bob, Sookie, who's awesome, the governor, which was very surprising, Lizzie, Mika, and Beth.
And
yes, and for
guitar,
guitar,
yes.
And they kind of keep going back and forth, showing different levels of his psyche, going back and forth on did he make the right choices, should he have been proactive. There's a bunch of repeated phrases. We were talking about them before we started recording, but the governor and Martin keep talking about debts to be paid. Let's see here, I have it written down as time to pay the price, and the others, the good people, if you will, which strangely includes Lizzie and Mika, whichever one was the crazy one. It's better now, you've got to know that, and the things that happened are the things that were always going to happen, or some version of that.
And didn't Beth sing a song too? It was like "Struggling Man" or something.
It was probably something really
on the nose. It was definitely the most on the nose thing for an episode that was this symbolic and had this much artsy stuff in it, which I also like, Aaron. That was by far the most on the nose thing, but it didn't bother me.
Oh, it bothered me. I mean, it's cool. I understand Emily King likes to sing, and that's a talent she has, and it's something that the character Beth was known for, and I understand all those things. But the song that she was singing was just like really on the nose. Like the lyrics were like, "Yes, we get it. You're singing about Tyrese. I get it. Okay, wonderful."
I'm sure there was some Mickey Mouse going. That's what it's called. It's like on the nose, like the Mickey Mouse going on with the song. I wasn't really paying too much attention to what the actual song was because I was just like, oh, here we go with that song. But putting that aside, this is part of where I get like into kind of issues, but also like praise at the same time. Where like on the positive side, Chad Coleman, who has only gotten so much to like really do on the show that felt like good and consistent with a character, not just like I'm really angry now or I'm really emotional about this Karen thing. Remember Karen? That was a character.
Who doesn't show up in his
right? Who doesn't?
Which is
weird.
And it would be one thing if I get it. Sometimes you can't get an actress or an actor back. Sometimes because they're not available. Sometimes because they're not interested. Sometimes because they have a contract dispute. But you mentioned her earlier in this very episode, and she doesn't show up.
She's the source of most of the grief and strife and various problems that his character's mind has gone through. So it's like that's a little. I'm glad we got Governor back, I guess. But I feel like this person seemed fairly important to you and would like likely factor into your death scene. But whatever. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. I don't know. But
it also seemed weird that the governor was the one like chiding him about that, like saying, she killed a woman you love and you forgave her. I'm like, you weren't even part of that plot line. Why are you telling us this? You weren't even part of that. I mean, why is the character saying this? But
getting back to with the positives, I think Chad Coleman, what he's doing here is very good work. I mean, I like this actor. I know him from The Wire. He is a good actor, and he's only been given so many chances to shine on the show. But I mean, if he's going to get sent out, at least he's working his hardest to pull off what's been a problematic character for me and for a lot of us, I think, and not just in terms of like what he is to the show versus the comic. I think at this point, especially in this episode, I was already. In episodes like leading up to this one, I was kind of at the point where it's like we're never going to get the Tyrese that we want. We discussed this on this podcast before because you have other characters that are kind of fulfilling the role that Tyrese has had in the comic and whatnot, and various changes in the show in the past have sometimes led to better versions of said characters, i.e. Herschel, or worse ones, i.e. Andrea. And this is the Tyrese we have. He's not a favorite character of mine, but at the same time, I was content with where he was. So getting the last of Chad Coleman's work on the show as his character, I was mostly fine with that in terms of like his acting abilities. I know I'm talking a lot, but hold on. The negatives is that I feel like listening to what he's going through and this demise of his, it just feels repetitive. It feels like I've gotten this before. It feels like I've gotten this kind of character who feels guilt about having to make tough decisions type situation. So it's like I don't know what the show's trying to really tell me beyond the bleakness of the situation that he's now presented with, where it's like, well, I was a good guy and I made some tough decisions, but at least I'm dying because that's better than still living. Like that's horrible for one thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. I have more to say on it, and I want to save that for maybe a little bit later. But I'm pretty much right there with you with some minor differences. But like I said, we'll get to those later.
I think I know I say this all the time, but it does stem from the dialogue just isn't that interesting all the time, and so it's hard to kind of get on board with what a character's going through if I'm just getting the same kind of like by the numbers dialogue being explained to me so clearly, even with the very very stylistic visuals taking place as well to make it more dynamically interesting from like a visual perspective.
It's like some of that dialogue is delivered with like this gravitas or whatever that it really doesn't need or deserve in a lot of cases. Like the whole thing about you need to pay the price. I'm just like, okay, I get it. You symbolize his guilt, But yeah, we've had this discussion before about this series about the dialogue sometimes tripping over like really good acting, and I think this is maybe another example of that. I really enjoyed Chad Coleman in this episode. To crib a line from The Dark Knight, maybe he's not the Tyrese we want, but he's the Tyrese we deserve for television at least. I mean, Tyrese in the comic was a very different character and served a very different role in the group, had a very different relationship with Rick, and was one of my favorite characters in all of the comic story. The Tyrese in the TV series, like I said, very different and not one of my favorite characters, but yet I really admire the acting when, like you said, Aaron, when he's like given a chance or given something to work with other than like confusion or just suppressed rage.
or being comatose for a season and a half for the most part.
Right. I mean, when he's given something to work with, I mean, you can see the craft of his acting. And I think that's a recurring theme of the series is that the acting, the level, the caliber of the actors sometimes suffer from the caliber of the dialogue. Not to take anything away from Scott Gimple, because I thought this, like I said, the artfulness or whatever of this episode made what would have been just a really downbeat episode a little more, like, I mean, Aaron made the point, a little more palatable because of that stylistic choice they made of telling the story the way they did. But this whole flashback sequence, I felt like, as cool as it was, I thought it went on a little long, and it seemed to have this kind of weight that really should have been afforded to it. If that makes any sense.
It does, because I can agree with that. Like as much as I admire the attempt, I think I like more of how it's about it than what it's about, I guess is the way to say it, where I like their approach to trying to differentiate this death from others and, adding something different to it in terms of like the visuals and presenting old cast members and what have you. But yeah, at the same time, we get a lot of it, and it's not all inherently interesting, which is a shame. But at the same time, given the reaction to this episode, I wonder if it played it straight, if it'd be like really hated then, like if people would really hate this episode because it didn't really do anything new and just, was really sad into the way character that we were kind of mixed on. But like gave the kind of effort that it did to elevate it above and beyond.
Yeah, I just thought it was so cool in like a series that's primarily, plot-driven episode after plot-driven episode has something like this. It's just very, I don't know if refreshing is the right word, but it was definitely, a good. I thought it was a cool change of pace.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the series doesn't attempt these things all the time either. Like it's The Walking Dead, it's a very stylish show. Like I mean, it presents this kind of bleak world and a grounded sense of reality. But in terms of the filmmaking on display, I mean, you can go back towards the beginning. I mean, maybe not so much season one. There's some elements. I mean, Darabont Direction obviously lends some greatness to the pilot or whatnot. But I mean, like the second season, there's an episode where Shane, it's the one where like after Carl got shot and Shane and Otis are running around, and like that episode's like it has this kind of opening of Shane like already, it's like a flash forward of Shane shaving off his head and feeling all guilty, you don't know exactly why. It just does there's little things like that's a specific callback, but I mean there's a lot of episodes like not necessarily like this one exactly, but ones that try to do more. They try to be more than just presenting it as is, and this was one that does it a little bit more so than we've seen recently, and I like that.
So meanwhile, on the other side of town, and I think we should be a little bit more specific because I don't think I said too much about the town. This is kind of a housing development deep in the woods, surrounded pretty much on all sides or three sides by forest. And the people of the town, before they died, which was a good time to do it, put up walls where there was already some walls around the town, but they helped build up walls around the rest of it. And so that's a good visual to have in your head as we talk about Michonne and Rick and Glenn. And I think you alluded to this earlier, Jim. Michonne is kind of expressing this desire to kind of settle down in one place, maybe fortifying the town, and she makes the point at some point in this discussion that maybe they've been on the road too long, and maybe it's time for them to try to make a home for themselves.
Yeah, which is good stuff from Michonne. It's similar to Tyrese, really. I mean, it's similar to I don't want to be out there killing all the time. That's what it essentially comes down to. And they just come back from another kind of standoff between another hostile group in the hospital. Sorry for the sound effects. And and she's thinking, I don't want to like have to deal with this all the time. We should find roots. We should plant something here, and we should be able to just live for a while and not be crazy out on the run like those savages that you had to bite the neck out of in order to survive. Like let's live somewhere. And it's like I completely see where she's coming from, and I'm glad that Rick, not just humors her, but gives her something to talk. He gives her something back. It's like, oh yeah, all right, we should do this. And
but before he does, I mean, first he's like, we should settle down here, and he makes some very salient points about have you paid attention to where we are? The wall, everything here is wrong. By the way, I don't think we said that, but everything in this town feels off for pretty much the whole episode. Something horrific happened here, and it had nothing to do with zombies. And it's never clear exactly what. We can get into some of that a little bit later, but there are weird things that don't make a lot of sense. Not in the way of that's just the show doing a bad job, but just in the way of the show's doing something very specifically to make you feel very uneasy about this town. And Rick points some of those things out. There's trees on all sides, zombies, or people could sneak up on us. This is not a very defensible place. They had walls. Clearly, that didn't work for them.
The fences are bent inward, like in terms of where they're broken in. There's tags that say wolves are near all over the place. Houses are burned down. I mean, it looks.
There's a lot of wounds on people that don't look like zombie wounds and don't look like gunshot wounds. And there are not zombies, but people. There are some zombies as well, or eventually zombies, but just people with arms and legs hacked off or cut cleanly through the center, like right at their belly button. And everything about that is weird and off-putting and unsettling.
Basically, Sith attacks.
Kind of, yeah. It seems like this place was whoever attacked this place were some sadistic motherfuckers. And I'll just leave that because that's what it was.
These slaughtered younglings. I know the one scene that sticks in my mind that you're referring to. Michonne is trying to convince Glenn and Rick is explaining to her, and they look down at the one part of the wall that had broken, and like you said, the whole yard is strewn with body parts, arms and legs, feet, pretty much everything but heads.
Heads and torso.
Yeah, are laying all over the place.
It's nasty. And
later they find the torso.
Yeah, which are all like alive, and oh my god, it's like that's some nasty stuff.
And I didn't notice this, but I saw it mentioned so many other places. They had like something carved in their foreheads, like X's or W's or something, which could be wolves, because wolves at the gate or wolves nearby, or it could be something else. But something messed up happened here. And they even say on Talking Dead, I don't get into specifics, I don't think this is really spoiler, but these things will come up again, probably at some point. And is it connected to what we saw, I guess it was more than a season and a half ago, or more than a season ago, but back with the governor, and when he was hooked up with that other group, and they found like the cabin with the people who had the signs around their necks saying like liar, rapist, murderer, that kind of stuff. Is there some connection to that? Possibly. Is there some connection to the symbols that Morgan is following on the trees? Like, there's a lot of weird stuff going on right now, and I kind of love that aspect of it. Just knowing something's off, knowing something's terrible, but not having any idea what it is.
I mean, it's world building. I mean, that's essentially it's world building, and I mean, if it pays off in terms of like having those deeper connections, great. I'm glad it's able to do. I mean, look at that. Like, remember the opening of this season where you have all the people getting their necks sliced, which included like the character who now plays Penguin on Gotham. That character who was in the previous season is just one of the he broke his leg or whatever.
Sam, I think, maybe?
Whatever, something like that. But yeah, I mean, just it's not as if they needed to get that character back. You could have had the same impact from just having a random guy get his neck sliced, but they did. I mean, so it's just clever world building that way.
Right. So after Rick, rightly at least in my opinion, shoots down the idea of staying there and fortifying the walls, Michonne tries a different tack and says, "Well, we're 100 miles from DC at this point. We've already come 500 miles, and even if Eugene was lying about having a cure, he did have some really salient points about why Washington might be a good place to be. Maybe we should go there." And eventually, Rick sees and decides, "Yep, let's go to Washington. It sounds like a good idea." And also in here, not to skip over things, but Glenn also, we talked a little bit about this, but he talks about how much he's changed just recently, and that even when they were back at Terminus, and he was like, "We gotta let these people out of the containers," and they find the weird Charles Manson looking guy. He's saying at this point, I don't think I would even have stopped opening the gates. Like, I've just become a more ruthless, a different person. That kind of leads to Michonne saying we need to settle down. We need to find a place to stop and regain our breath and just get everything back together.
This is around that time that he decides to pick up that baseball bat, which is that's nice.
Yep.
Nice weapon.
Yeah, that's a good strong weapon, as we saw in Terminus and other places. I also noted that. So right around that time when Rick says, okay, we'll go to Washington, it's a good plan, it's certainly better than staying here, that's when they hear Noah screaming. So they follow the screams, they find that he's being attacked by zombies, he does not get bit though. But they have a pretty cool fight scene, which has this great moment of Michonne trying to chop one of the zombies' heads off, but it has this piece of rebar sticking out of its neck, and the sword just bounces off of it.
I literally yelled out, I was like, oh, Michonne, blood weakness! And then Rick does like ultimate badass move, which was like my zombie kill of the week, where he pulls out the rebar and then beats the zombie with the rebar. That was amazing.
That was very cool.
Oh boy. And Noah, that boy ain't right, can't get that. Just zombies all over him.
I know he's hiding under garden trellis. When they come up on him, he's like got garden trellis between him and the zombies. He's hiding under it. No, I'm just garden trellis. Don't bother me.
So after they rescue Noah, they go and they try to rescue Tyrese. At this point, we mentioned Tyrese has already been bitten by a second zombie, which he then killed with a geode. Their minerals Marie. And then,
nice.
Sorry, he got to do it. And then there's been a lot of flashes between them and him. And we've got more and more of his story, more and more of his intermental fight, between the different aspects of his personality being represented by the dead characters.
Well, some of the cuts between his hallucinations and the reality are pretty jarring and ineffective. The one scene where the governor comes at him in his hallucination, it's actually the second walker that bites him. That was really shot. I mean, those tight shots of his face and then the walker's face. I mean, they kept showing the close-ups. You could hear the teeth chattering, and just that scene really stuck with me. Just the way it was shot, I thought was really well done.
Well, and also that one was really cool. But the other transition that really stuck out to me was where Tyrese reaches out his arm. I forget exactly why he was reaching out, who he was reaching out to in his fever dream state. But then you just have this immediate flash cut of the same framing, but now you've got Rick grabbing his arm and Michonne chopping his arm off to try and keep the infection from spreading, or the zombification from spreading. Really cool moments both times, and really just kind of like gut punch shocking moments because you just are not expecting them. They've already this weird fever dream pitch, but you've kind of settled into the flow of that fever dream. So when they're pulled back into reality, it's almost even more jarring than the weirdness.
Yeah, it's good stuff in terms of kind of keeping a visceral quality going and showing us the kind of extents that everyone's going to have to go to now to try and get this person to safety, even though it's very likely that he's not going to make it.
Right, so they alert over the walkie-talkies the other half of the group that they're coming, and kind of their basis of what happened. They wrap up Tyrese in a blanket as best they can and start trying to carry him back to their vehicle, and then drive that vehicle back to the other group so they can cauterize the wound, etc. And things just quickly go bad. There's zombies everywhere. They run into a vehicle where we find the other half of the dismembered people.
Before that scene, I'm sorry, Jordan. Before that scene, there's a really cool scene where they're fighting off zombies. They're coming through the walls or the gate.
The gate's like crowded with zombies.
Yes,
this is where that song is playing, right?
It's playing in the background, and it's like it's done in slow motion. My zombie kill of the week is during the scene actually, because there's one zombie that makes it through the packed crowd and it's coming towards the camera, and Rick whips his python around and shoots it from behind, and you see literally the head exploding as it's coming toward camera in slow motion. Really cool scene. But I thought it was also cool the way they while they're trying to get Tyrese out of the tunnel and everything, he's much bigger than any of them.
Yeah,
right.
And it's obvious,
right.
And it's like it's cool that they use that as part of their mad scramble. You know what I mean? When they're trying to get through everything else. I mean, they're lumbering through and they're trying to figure out the best way to carry him, and they can't, and they're dragging him, and they have Noah trying to hold on to him, but he collapses under his weight, and I don't know. I just thought that whole sequence.
Yeah,
was really
well. It was a hell of an endurance round for these guys trying to make this work.
I really like, to go back to that song for a second. Yeah, maybe the lyrics were too on the nose or whatever. I wasn't paying that close attention to the lyrics because of what was going on visually. And I really did like that. Not just the slow motion shot towards camera, Rick shooting the zombie in slow motion that you're talking about, but just that whole thing in slow motion with the slow motion CGI and killing zombies. That's really tough to do. Like, it's hard enough to do. I mean, granted, I can't do CGI to save my life, so it's not like I'm speaking from experience here, but you can tell when you watch, some of the CGI on even the show from time to time, and sometimes you can just tell that, that gun's not pointed in exactly the right place to do that shot, or that blood splatter is happening maybe just a second too late, or a quarter second or a frame too late. And for it not to hold up, or not to work always 100% of the time in regular speed is one thing, but when you're slowing it down, and you can see every frame for 4 times as long, or whatever the exact time differential is, that's really hard to get just perfect. And I thought because I think he kills like 4 zombies there, every single shot looked perfect. The angle of the gun, the timing of the muzzle flash, the timing of the blood spray, like every single one looked perfect. And time to the music I thought was really good.
And I think on his side, like Michonne takes the top off of one and then decapitates another in the same span of time. And yeah, I thought the CGI looked great in that scene. It's a really striking scene for them to slow the violence down like that. It's just something that you don't usually do.
Well, it's the kind of scene where you have to get that right because you know what you're going to do with it. You know it's going to be in slow motion, you know it's going to be seen in full detail, and the angles that you're shooting with. So it's like, it better look great. So I imagine there's a lot of time being spent. And being an episode like this, as opposed to something like one where zombies are falling through the roof or something like that, where there's kind of a large scale action sequence in terms of like scope. I mean, this episode doesn't really have that. Instead, it has a town that's new, but the zombie encounters are closer. They're closer and they're smaller scale by comparison. So
they're personal.
Yeah, they have more personal feel to them. And so I imagine you have to harness a budget around something like that. That's a very clever way to do so. And they know instead of focusing on the grandeur of the scene, they can focus on the intimate qualities of it, which is why it came out so well.
So they get him back to the van eventually. They have the whole run with the other truck with the other top halves of the people who are now zombified, but I really don't get the impression that they were when they were chopped in half, which is horrifying.
Yep.
And they're back on the road trying to get the other half of the group. And at a certain point in the scene, we can get another transition from the people who are actually in the van to now it's Bob and Mika and Beth, etc., and who are comforting Tyrese. As you can tell, he's really starting. He's gone, and he eventually tells Bob to turn off the radio, effectively deciding that he wants to let go. And he passes away and is eventually put down by Michonne, so he won't reanimate. And the rest of the survivors then attend his funeral, which is what we saw in the beginning, thinking it was Beth's funeral. It's not. It's actually Tyrese's funeral, which Father Gabriel presides over. And we see a visually traumatized Sasha who struggles to even just stand and put a shovel full of dirt on in the grave on top of her brother. And that is where the episode ends.
Just to take a step back real quick, when that truck pops open, the 2 or 3 dozen chattering zombie skulls and torsos in that parking lot. Another really scene that really stuck with me afterwards.
Yeah.
Well implemented. I thought that really looked good.
I wrote out what the truck on my notes for that one. That scene, I really like that. As much as I might have issues with kind of the nature of the hallucinations of what story is being told here, I thought that was, if Tyrese is going to go out, I found that to be an effective way to do so, and an emotional one in terms of kind of communicating that this person is passing on. That was a good one. Because as much as I'm not like the hugest Tyrese fan in terms of the show, I thought it was effective and enough time was given to it. Where I had issues with like Bob's death because it seemed like I didn't know Bob all that well to get so much treatment about his death. Where this one mattered more to me as a Walking Dead fan. I would say, and I was very happy with how this one played out. Also, Sasha's had a rough week between losing Bob and her brother.
It's been a little longer than a week, but yeah, it's been a rough month or so.
She can throw it into Maggie's face all she wants.
But she got Bob's school jacket, so it's not all bad.
I hope Maggie didn't get Beth's guitar.
Who knows? Maybe Maggie also plays guitar.
I'm sure some people on the Walking Dead fan page will love that. More guitar on the show.
Never go wrong with more guitar. So shall we give our ratings, gentlemen?
Sure.
Alrighty, Aaron, why don't you start us off on a scale of 1 to 5 busters, 5 being the best, 1 being just the pits. How many busters do you give this episode?
Far from the pits. I give it a strong 4 busters. I think the episode, while having some repetitive issues that I mentioned already, I do think the attempt to make a very compelling episode of television via the direction and in the performances from the key actors involved do enough to really make it a strong episode for this mid-season premiere, by the way, which is I like that it was more, I guess, intimate and focused rather than being this kind of expansive over the top premiere which we've had in the past.
I also give it a 4 out of 5. I like when they take stylistic chances with the show once in a while, and I really appreciated this one. Some of the things just didn't quite work for me, as I mentioned before. Some of the things seemed kind of maybe out of place, maybe a little too much here and there. But overall, I'm positive on the episode, so 4 out of 5 for me.
Like I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, and I mentioned parts of this later on, so I would hold them for now, but I loved swaths of this episode, large swaths of this episode, and I had some major problems with others. I already mentioned the fact, Karen wasn't there, and that seemed really weird. Again, I understand why, sometimes that just can't happen and things don't work out that way. Whatever. That aside, the direction of this episode was amazing. I absolutely loved everything it was doing visually in terms of the way the camera was placed. There was a lot of shots you've just never seen in this show before. The music even had a markedly different tone, very kind of a lot of shrillness to it and a lot of just general creepiness to it. Yes, the music in the show is often generally creepy, but this was slightly different in the way it did that. From a direction standpoint, I think pretty much everything about this worked. Even the music, yes, whatever, maybe the lyrics were a bit on the nose, but the way they worked the music into that slow motion sequence, all the hallucination stuff, the twist back and forth between reality and the hallucinations, the use of the radio, all that stuff I thought worked great. What I didn't think worked was this. They have not earned this with Tyrese. And I'm not one of those people who, and nothing against people who are one of these people, but I'm not one of those people who, I love Tyrese in the comics and they wrote him in the show. Tyrese was a cool badass in the comics, and quite honestly, he's been dead so long in the comics that I don't really remember my thoughts about him, but I don't really remember caring that much when he died. Oh, it sucks that a cool character died, but that was about it. If they had done this episode, or a very similar episode with this visual style and the storytelling technique with Rick, or with Daryl, or even Carol, a character I had strong feelings for in the show, positive or negative, preferably positive, this episode would have been just gangbusters for me. But with Tyrese, they have not earned it. They've tried things with him. They haven't had this whole crisis of faith 2 seasons too late, which just did not work for me at all. And while I like the actor a lot, and I think on the rare occasions they gave him something to do, it was awesome, but they have not earned this hour-long tribute to a character that this episode was with Tyrese. They haven't even come close, at least in my opinion. So from an artistic standpoint, this episode was awesome. And outside of The Walking Dead as a whole, this episode was awesome. But inside The Walking Dead, it really didn't work for me on a huge level, which is a shame. I'm still going to side with you guys. I think I'm giving this one a 4 because really, it really did sweep me along with the direction, and I think that's going to win out over the the character problems I have. But really, those are some very strong character problems I had with this episode. So it is a 4, but it's a 4 with a huge asterisk for me.
I can see where you're coming from on that. I wish we got this a little bit earlier, but
sorry, I wasn't sure whether I should save it for the end or. But sorry,
I can see where you're coming from because I agree to some extent, which is basically what amounts to why I think it's repetitive, which is why I don't think it services the episode necessarily. Or kind of the things that he's thinking about that lead to having a longer runtime for this episode, so we have to spend more time with this person. Does it really matter enough? Does it feel earned? And I agree that I don't think it necessarily feels earned for this character. With that said, I guess if I had to look from the eyes of the people making the show, I do think they did a good job setting up Tyrese's arc this season. If this is where it culminates with, I feel like in terms of how it began with where he's coming from after all the stuff with Carol and the little girls and coming to terminus, and then being involved with stuff with Martin, and where he first lays out his kind of I don't want to kill people thing, and then we see more of that throughout. We get to the church where he's kind of horrified by what's going on there, and we get to the whole plan at the hospital where he wants to take this alternate route where things don't go all commando for shooting everybody. Instead, we just kind of make this this kind of peaceful trade-off. Where I see where the seeds are to get him to that point. Again, I don't think necessarily this episode completely justified the way it approached how much we need to see of Tyrese dealing with his death, but I do see where they're coming from and getting us to this point.
I agree. I see the consistency in the characterization over the last season
compared to where it was before, where he seemed very inconsistent as a character.
Right, but that being said, that goes back to what I was saying about that's his moral quandary, his crisis of faith that he's been having was 2 seasons too late. And yes, I understand they added this character later in the show than they did in the comics or whatever.
And there's course correction based off Scott Gimple being the showrunner now, where again it's having to make up time for things that not necessarily wasted, but just having a rocky ship getting to this point of like season 4, season 5, where things are a little straighter.
But for me, it's the same problem I have with Father Gabriel, which is in season 1, if Father Gabriel showed up, fine, I get it. I get that a character with this particular moral outlook is still around, and I get why he's still having this crisis. Tyrese, I'll even give him to maybe season 2, middle of season 3 to have this particular crisis. But at this point, it's been 2 years into the zombie apocalypse. It's far too late. That crisis of conscience is no longer relevant nor interesting to me as a viewer. It is far too late for him to be having those questions because either you are for something or you're against something. And maybe this episode works in a certain level. I'll give it credit in that he finally just agrees that it's far too late. He's far too long for this world, and it's time for him to go. And I can appreciate that, and I agree. But yeah, it's just his whole storyline because of that reason, just similar to Father Gabriel. It doesn't work. It's too late in the show to have a character like that. And I didn't hate Tyrese. I want to make that clear. I just didn't care about Tyrese. I was very neutral on him. And if this had been a character I loved, this episode would have been a 5 or maybe even a 6. I would have broken the rules. I would have broken the whole numeral structure of it and given it a 6 probably. But it's just for him.
Could you imagine if this was a Daryl death episode? Oh my god, TV burning down.
Had this been Daryl, and obviously whatever ghost would have been coming to him, it would have been a very different thing. It might have been similar to Chupacabra in the way they did that there, but it would have been a different quandary going through his head, a different storyline. But if they'd done the same thing stylistically for a Daryl death episode, that is an instant winner for me. And not just because it's Daryl, but because Daryl is a character I care about, and Daryl is a character that they have earned a death episode like this for. And so I've rambled on this long enough. It's still a net positive. I want to make it clear. I know I sound very down on this, but man, did I have some problems with doing it for Tyrese. For Chad Coleman, maybe. Chad Coleman's earned it, but Tyrese hasn't. Anyway, enough of my prattling and rambling and repeating myself. Jim, what do our listeners on the Facebook group think about this episode? Because I know they've got some things to say.
The Walking Dead TV podcast is the name of the Facebook group, and as always, we have a lot of spirited discussion, news bits, fun stuff always being posted there. So, join that group, the Walking Dead TV podcast. And every episode, we ask our members of the group to tell us what they thought of the episode. And as you can imagine, from this kind of episode, the opinions are all over the place. In fact, the very first 2 give you an idea of the vast spectrum of opinion on this. Mike Jones, 4 Beth Reapers out of 5. If Beth singing was the start of the afterlife, I'd want to cut my arm off to stay alive too. Sad that Tyrese was never the character we saw from the comic. Number 2, Jeff Rhodes says 1 token black guy out of 100. That was horrible. Reminded me of Gladiator, where they kept showing him dragging his hand in the wheat, the sun, the run, the painting over and over. They could have redeemed Tyrese into a badass, but they reached their black guy quota and he had to go. 3 out of 5 from Shaylin Bensavega. After Michonne cut off his left arm, she should have said, "Don't worry, you'll be all right." Get it? All right.
He can't stand it, Cole.
This episode was a little too slow, depressingly for an opener for me. You can tell when Kirkman has a character monologue for a while. They're about to get it. I'm with you there, Shailen. The slow motion decapitation was zombie kill of the week. Belinda Clark 8, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5 truckfuls of torsos. The ridiculous 3 months breaks are ruining the show. The anticipation was so high for me, I don't know what could have actually appeased me. Not that. Pamela Burton, give it a 4.5 out of 5. I am mad Tyrese is dead, but I can't deny the episode was well done. Maybe I'm the only one who liked it despite how sad it was. Terry Bernard, I really enjoyed the episode. I'm glad Tyrese's death didn't get the T-Dog treatment. He was a good guy because he drove a church van. But yeah, I'd give it a 4. Hezron Matt 3.5. Tyrese got caught slipping out of 5. Great direction, but it was a tad over dramatic. As someone pointed out, it got Terrence Malick on us. I also call BS on how Chris and Tyrese snuck up on. They've been doing this a while. They got careless. Georgia Lee, good Lord people. I thought it was excellent. 4 out of 5. Still from last season, had to be 5 out of 5, and nothing has to beat yet. I loved it. So well directed and emotional loads of action. 10 Bono, 2 artsy for Walking Dead. 3 out of 5 Tyrese Hallucinations. Everard Santamarina, 3 brought back dead characters out of 5. Artistically solid, technically solid, just boring and repetitive. Max Sofer, 4 out of 5 radio broadcasts. It gets 5 for direction and production. Beautiful, well-made episode. 3 for the story, though. I struggled with them on many levels. 2 things. Kirkman said Rickman wasn't going to lose his arm. So far, so good. 2 radio broadcasts, all in Tyneside are real. There was some malicious foreshadowing there. I think they're all in his head.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were all in his head as well.
Me too.
Because the town didn't have any power.
Right. Brent Jones, 2.5. Glenn's baseball bat foreshadow out of 5. When we finally hear Ty say turn it off, I couldn't help but agree with him. Ouch. Roger Austin, 3.5. Forearm bites. Good farewell to a character that didn't seem to do all that much during his time in the show. Another watered down version of the comic version. And sadly, I won't miss him. Robert Nango, 3. This world was never meant for one as beautiful as you. Out of 5. As we mentioned before, there's a lot of spirited discussion and argument as to the quality of this episode and what people liked and didn't like about it. And again, if you want to read any of that, just go to the Facebook group. It's all pretty fun and easy to read and pretty respectful too, I gotta say, from Facebook forums go. Brian Fuqua, 5 beautiful goodbyes out of 5. It was gut-wrenching to see all these characters back. When I rewatched the intro, I really appreciated the brilliant writing and editing. Ian Timms, 3 out of 5 unpaid bills. Not the crazy I was expecting. If Tyrese was going to grow a pair, then I guess it was his time. Adam Fatah gives the episode 4 out of 5 stars. It was sad that Tyrese didn't get to spend his final moments with his sister Sarah. Trisha Terrell Collins, I say 4.5 squiggling torsos out of 5. And the episode that has me screaming in a good way at the TV is hardly welcome back. Love seeing the dead characters we know and hate/love again. Don Hafford, 2.5 out of 5. It opened up some new questions going forward. There's some interesting visuals, and the rewired storytelling was refreshing, but Michonne seemed out of her character as we know her. Tyrese's death was unnecessary and lacked much emotion. So, like I said, opinions all over the board, and if you want a good place to discuss Walking Dead related stuff, also a good place to get a lot of news, and we have links there to Aaron's weekly reviews of The Walking Dead that he posts at theyoungfolks.com. You can get all that right at the Facebook group called, oddly enough, The Walking Dead TV Podcast.
I gotta say, as I was writing during my review last night, for people that don't know, I write several TV. I cover a couple different TV shows, like Gotham and The Americans as well. And I'm spoiled at this point because I get screeners of those shows. I don't get screeners for The Walking Dead, so I'm watching it live with everybody else. And so I'm always racing to kind of get those reviews out. But for whatever reason, this was a pretty easy one to kind of go over. And it's not a short review either, so I was quite happy. I was just able to communicate what I thought about the episode pretty efficiently. I like trying to get it out, for you guys, the listeners, wouldn't have to, to read, because I enjoy sharing my thoughts in full detail. But yeah, no, thanks Jim for the plug on that one.
Speaking of plugs, now would probably be a great time to mention our sponsor of the Walking Dead TV podcast, and that is DCBService.com, discount comic book service. Head over there and you can pick up your floppies, your individual comics, 32-page, 20-page, depending on what they are, comics for deep discounts, 15, 20, 25, sometimes even 51% off. They have great deals there. Also check out their sister site, InStockTrades.com, where you can get the hardback and paperback comic book collections of multiple issues for great discounts as well. We thank them for their service of this podcast and for sponsoring us for so long. They have been really awesome to us, and we think you should check them out because they're really awesome to their customers as well. So check out DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com to save tons of money on awesome comic books.
And going on right now on their site, they have 50% off all Marvel and DC trades. So if you want to pick up any trade paperbacks from DC or Marvel, they are 50% off right off the top of the bat.
And I would give a recommendation to the current versions of Avengers and New Avengers, as big things are brewing in the Marvel Universe right now. And if you want to be caught up by the time Secret Wars starts up in just a few months, Avengers and New Avengers by Jonathan Hickman are the places you want to be, and they're damn good comics to boot. So,
Spider-Man and She-Hulk are dating.
No, but the whole Marvel Universe may be coming to an end in a very, very explosive type of way.
They broke up?
Don't sell the DC side short either too, dude. We got Convergence coming up and a lot of cool stuff spinning out of that, including a new Bizarro miniseries, which I'm really excited about. But DCB Service not only has comics. Oh no, my friends, no. They also can hook you up with your statues, your action figures, trade paperbacks. Would you like a Michonne hoodie? You can get it there.
I would.
Would you like one of those sweet McFarlane diorama sets with Daryl driving his chopper down on top of some zombie necks?
I want to.
Get that there. You can get that there. All kinds of fun stuff there. Not only, like I said, if you're not into the comics of The Walking Dead, that's totally cool. But if you want to get some sweet Walking Dead swag or gifts for a friend who is a fan of The Walking Dead, then DCB Service is also your place for that.
Valentine's Day is coming up. What better way to show someone you love them than to buy them a disembodied zombie head?
Of course. Or get them a governor tank full.
Yeah, exactly.
A bouquet of zombie head.
Well, it's certainly going to have a bouquet to it. It's in the smell. So that's pretty much it for this episode of the Walking Dead TV podcast. Of course, you can leave us a voicemail. Tell us what you thought of the show, whether it be this week's episode, next week's episode, or any episode you want to talk about. You can leave us a voicemail at 972-798-3830 or send us an email, wdtv@hhwlod.com. That's wdtv@hhwlod.com. Check out hhwlod.com for all of our great shows, like Half Hour Wasted, The Long Box of Doom, The Black Box, Out Now with Aaron and Abe. Aaron, as you are the Aaron about Now with Aaron and Abe, what are you guys talking about on your next episode?
That is me. This week we're talking about Jupiter Ascending, the new film from the Wachowskis. A lot of thoughts on that one. Really wanted it to be good. Really ambitious, that's for sure.
Well, that says a lot about the movie there. We've got tons of other shows like Jersey Shore, which has been posting episodes again, Ichabod, Cranecast, our brand new Whedon-cast, which is going through all of Joss Whedon's work in chronological order. They started with Buffy, because of course, where else would you start? And they're currently making their way through the first season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's a lot of fun. Check that out.
Is there an Alien Resurrection episode coming?
I'm sure there will be,
okay, good.
But they have not gotten to it yet. And on Twitter, of course, you can follow us at HHWLOD_network. And so until there's no more room in hell and the dead walk the earth, remember, it's better now. You've got to know that. Have a good week, everybody. And next week on The Walking Dead, if you want no spoilers whatsoever for the episode, tune out now. But next week on The Walking Dead, Season 5, Episode 10 is entitled Them. And the synopsis we have from TVGuide.com is, Life on the Road has the group beaten and beleaguered. That's a fun word to say, beleaguered. And in our preview for next week's episode on Talking Dead, we see our group standing at a bridge with a bunch of zombies coming towards them, and they look beleaguered. I'll give them that.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's pretty much all we have.
Everyone seems very tired from the preview that I saw.
They need water.
Yeah,
they need water and food, and they're just tired of walking around.
Yeah, it seems like maybe their vehicle has broken down, and they're on foot now, which is bad, and they're tired and hungry and thirsty.
Maybe it's just because I've had Spaceballs 2 on the mind with all this fake news about, not fake, but probably not news happening with Spaceballs 2 existing, but when like everyone's like water, well, I was waiting for one to be like room service.
He ain't found shit.
Calm the area.
All right.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
This is the recording sound that I'm making right
And this
now.
will be 1:30, correct?
Yes.
And we know because it's 14 weeks after
1:30.
123.
If you tug it more than once, it's playing with it.
If there's anything wrong with that.
Bring off my pudding can. Take my penknife, my good man. I swear it's Springfield's only choice. Throw up your hands and raise your voice. Monorail. What's it say? Monorail. One more time. Monorail. Didn't I?
Title. What is the title of that episode?
What happened and what's going on?
What happened and what's going on? A long title there.
Guys, I just figured, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm sorry to create an edit point here, but I'm only recording on the left channel. I just realized what the problem was. It was set to mono.
Oh, I record mono.
Yeah, mine's set to mono. Don't get on the left.
Okay. Never mind.
As long as it's recording something, and that's that thing that is recording as your voice, we should be good.
Sorry.
People who only have sound in their right ears will have a problem, but no, they won't. What was I saying?
The episode name.
Episode name. Say it again for me one more time.
What happened and what's going on?
You're going to put the Proclaimers 500 miles at the end of
That's
this?
what I was
Oh, that's a pretty good one,
I wanted
actually.
to bring that up earlier, but I didn't want to spoil the joke. The music came in later.
Yeah, because he was talking earlier. He was like, we've come 500
Yeah,
miles. And I was just thinking, and you'll go 500.
Alright, stopping recording.
Wait, what happened to next week's thing?
Bum-bum-bum-bum.
I'm still going. You
I
paused.
am
I was like, I was waiting for a second. And next week.
Hey, now you have some bloopers. Give me a beat.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, and recording. Okay. Wow, thank you for reminding me.